Alright, so to illustrate the idea of IP addresses, let me just show you an example. So here, I'm going to just copy this. Right, so you can see that this is an example of an IP address, and this is the Google website. So you can see that an internet website is really referred to by an IP address. Um, the names that you see, which we'll go into later, called a domain name, is actually built for humans. Okay, so the IP address is really the way the internet works and how one computer can communicate with another, or how we can access a server on the internet. Okay, so basically the domain name, and I'll talk about domain names in a moment, is this. Of course, it's the same one. Okay, that's google.com. All right. So I hope that's clear what an IP address is and what it is for. Okay, so let's begin the next part. Okay, so I hope it's clear that the decimal notation of an IP address is difficult to remember. So domain names really were developed as a way to identify a particular server or particular computer on the internet. I hope it's important to remember that um, this IP address here is divided into three parts. The first one here is what you call the top level domain, okay, and then this San Diego here is what you call the second level domain, and www is normally the host, so that is the actual computer. Okay, we won't go into details, but basically that is how you identify an object on the internet. If you're not using an IP address, you would be using a domain name. Okay? So here are the most commonly used domain names, which you probably are familiar with. Okay, so let's go into this topic of web page. Sorry about that. Web page requests and delivery protocols. So the web itself is a subset of the internet, and it is just a method of communicating between a client and a server. So because it uses a client server, there are two components in the web. Okay, the first one is the web server, which actually retrieves requests from different clients. This is the web server, okay, and it requires certain software to make this happen. And you have the web client software, which you, of course, are very familiar with, and this is usually the browser. So this combination wherein you have a very simple client communicating with a web server is what you call a client server architecture. Okay, so that's just the tech term for this. Okay, so the web is characterized by client server architecture, but there are many client server architectures on the internet. Web is only one of them. So when you have email, that's a client server architecture. When you download via torrents, that still uses something like a client server architecture. Um, so web is just one of them. What distinguishes the web from other client server architectures is the way it communicates. And I think we're all familiar with the way the web communicates. But the most important thing to remember is um, the term for the way the web communicates is called HTTP. All right, HTTP. Basically, you all know how it works. When you type in a web page on a browser, that is really HTTP. So you type in um, basically a certain format, right? Yeah, with these two slashes, and you call this thing a uniform resource locator URL. Yeah, so you type the, that's why I say you type the URL on the browser. to access a web page. That's just the style. This is a system of communication. Again, you call this system of communication or of transferring information hypertext transfer protocol, or HTTP. Okay, I'm going to skip through email because it's really not that important. Okay. Okay, next, we just want to talk a little bit about markup languages and the web. The markup languages characterize the web. So when we talk about HTTP, one important characteristic is that it's supposed to read markup languages, all right? And of course, the most common markup language is it's HTML. Um, so I think I have a good example here. Let's just exit this for a moment. And I have an example here. Let's just type in this site here. Okay, so I'll just type it in here. And then let's say this is the website, right? I chose this one because it's a simple website. So if I view the source, okay, I view the source, you can see basically the HTML of the website. So this HTML really is a way to, again, it's just composed of tags. It's just a text file basically, and a very simple way to format a website. That is HTML. Okay, so this is the HTML of the website. Okay, and I think hopefully you've seen this or you're familiar with it. Okay, let's go back to PowerPoint. Alright, so it's the most commonly used markup language. Now there's another language which I just want to talk about. It's called XML. It's also very famous, especially if you have mobile phones. It's very much used. Okay, so let me just show you an example of XML. So let's type this in. And let's go here. So this website is an example of what's called Rss Feed, which you may or may not have used, but this is quite commonly used in mobile phones to display data, and I'll explain a little bit later why that is so. Okay, so this is the RSS feed. So let's say we go into business. Okay, so what we see here is, let me just, okay, this is the feed, right? It's just a bunch of text. But if we go here to view feed XML, you can see what's the basic content of this website. So so this is the this is the RSS feed. Now let me control click view source. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is better viewed. Let me use another browser, Firefox. Firefox displays the thing, displays XML a bit better, so that it's easier to understand what you're looking at. Because some browsers, they actually transform the XML to something different, so it will be formatted a little bit better. Okay, so let's say this is the RSS feed. So again, you can see any browser can display it, but what I'm interested in is the source. Okay, there it is. So this is, as you can see, this is an XML page. Okay, you will see that at the header there's XML. Every XML page will have this header, and the main difference, you might say it looks like HTML, but the main difference is these tags here are not used to really format the data, but it's used to describe what's the data. So for example, when you have title here or image, you're describing the image that's going to be shown. You're not saying that I want to display the image in a certain way. I'm just saying that there is an image here. In the same way that if you have a description is not to format the data, but to describe what data it is. And you can pretty much use any tag that you want or agree upon a certain set of tags. Okay, so XML um, is another way to format data. Not format data, but to describe data on the internet. So HTML and XML are pretty much used on the web. Again, XML is used for describing data. You'll see that mostly in RSS feeds and mobile phones. And HTML is used on the web and also in mobile phones, but it's mostly used on a desktop computer with a bigger screen, right, where the formatting can really show up.